The millionaire lay on the couch, eyes shut, pretending to sleep. He wanted to test the black maid's 10-year-old daughter, to see what she'd do while unattended. The little girl tiptoed in, carrying her mom's cleaning rag. She looked at him, then whispered to her mother softly, "Mom, he's sad. I can feel it. We should help him." The millionaire's eyes twitched. This wasn't the reaction he expected. One more sentence from the girl made him freeze completely. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. By all outward measures, Damian Cole had won. He had the kind of wealth people clicked on in late-night articles, the kind of house real estate agents drooled over, the kind of life that made strangers say, "Must be nice." Tall glass windows, polished marble floors, a driveway long enough to get lost on. Everything perfectly placed, everything custom, everything expensive. And yet, the house was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the other kind. The kind where echoes lasted too long. The kind where every tick of the clock reminded you were the only one listening. Damian Cole, late 40s, sharp suit even on his off days, sat at the end of his long dining table, scrolling through emails on a phone that never seemed to stop buzzing. He wasn't handsome in the soft, friendly way. He was striking in a severe way. Sharp jawline, neatly trimmed beard, eyes that weighed everything they looked at. Eyes that had learned a long time ago that trusting the wrong person could cost you everything. He wore his discipline like another layer of clothing. The staff called him Mr. Cole. Business partners called him ruthless. Lawyers called him strategic. But nobody called him friend. Not anymore. He checked his watch out of habit. 11:02 a.m. Right on schedule, the front door opened quietly and closed just as softly. Voices drifted in. One familiar, one smaller, lighter. "Say excuse me if you roll past anyone, okay?" "Yes, Mama." He knew that voice. Maria Carter, his maid. Maria did not belong to this house the way his furniture did, but she belonged inside it, more than anything else did. She moved with a cautious grace, always careful, always respectful, always alert, like someone who had learned the hard way that one wrong move could get her sent home. Early 30s, soft brown skin, hair pulled back into a bun that frayed by noon no matter how tightly she twisted it. Eyes that carry both warmth and exhaustion. She was good. Very good. Baseboards scrubbed, counters spotless, silver polished, clothes ironed precisely. Damian liked that about her. In a world where everyone tried to negotiate, manipulate, overcharge, shortcut, Maria just worked. He respected that. But trust? Trust was not something he handed out anymore. Not after business partners stole from him. Not after a cousin forged his signature. Not after a woman he almost married quietly moved money out of his accounts. His lawyer's words still hovered in his head like a permanent warning. People take advantage when you're not watching. So Damian watched, especially today. Because today, Maria had brought her daughter. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," Maria said, appearing at the dining room archway, wiping her hands on her cleaning cloth. "My apologies, sir. I had to bring Lila today. The sitter canceled last minute. I promise she'll stay out of your way." Beside her stood Lila, age 10, dark curls pulled into two puff ponytails, big brown eyes taking in everything, backpack hugged against her chest like a shield. She wore a faded yellow t-shirt with a cartoon star on it, and jeans with a little rip at the knee that had obviously been sewn up by hand. "Good morning, sir," Lila said carefully. her small voice polite and clear. Damian set his phone down. He gave a short nod. "Morning," he said. "Just make sure she doesn't touch anything." "Yes, sir," Maria answered quickly. "She won't. Lila, what did I tell you?" Lila straightened, repeating like a script. "Don't touch what isn't mine. Don't run. Don't bother Mr. Cole. Don't eat nothing that's not from my bag." Her earnestness caught Damian off guard for half a second. Then he pushed the feeling away. Children made him anxious, not because they were loud or messy, though they were, because they were unpredictable. And unpredictable things in a house full of crystal, glass, and art, worth more than most people's homes? That was a liability. "Good," he said simply. Maria lowered her eyes slightly. "We'll be in the living room and upstairs, sir. Is there any room you don't want us to enter today?" "I already told you. Office is off limits," he said. "Everything else is fine." She nodded. "Yes, sir." She turned to go, but Lila paused and looked back. "Your plants are pretty," she said softly. Damian blinked, thrown by the unexpected comment. He followed her gaze to the tall potted fig trees by the window, leaves glossy in the sunlight. "Oh," he said, "thanks." Most people complimented his car, his watch, his collection of modern art. No one ever mentioned the plants. Damian settled back into his emails as the soft sounds of cleaning drifted through the house. The faint swish of a mop, the clink of dishes, Maria's low humming, Lila's quieter footsteps as she followed. Sometimes Lila read at the kitchen island. Sometimes she colored in a notebook. Sometimes she helped Maria dust low shelves, carefully moving framed photos and putting them back exactly where they were. Damian noticed. She never touched things just to touch them, never wandered into rooms she wasn't invited into, never opened drawers, never tried to explore his office. She'd even once picked up a toy a guest's child had left behind outside and set it neatly by the front door, unbothered by the fact that it was clearly worth more than all her clothes combined. She brought her own snacks in a small zippered lunch bag. Crackers, apple slices, a cheap juice pouch. Not once did she glance with longing at the bowl of imported chocolates on the coffee table. Not once did she ask for anything. She just existed in the house, like a quiet, careful breeze. And yet, every time she was there, Damian's muscles stayed tight. His lawyer's warning wouldn't leave. People take advantage when you're not watching. So he started watching. That week, Damian found himself observing her more, from the corner of his eye as he pretended to scroll, from the top of the stairs as she helped Maria fold towels, from the kitchen doorway as she wiped a tiny fingerprint off a cabinet she hadn't even made. She greeted him every time she saw him. "Good afternoon." "Hi, sir." "Have a good lunch." Always with the same small, polite smile. Never too familiar, never too loud. If she bumped something, she fixed it. If she finished a snack, she threw away the wrapper. If Maria dropped a cloth, Lila was the first one to pick it up. Still he found himself unconvinced. People were good when watched. It was when you weren't in the room that their real selves came out. So, one afternoon, while Maria dusted the bookshelves and Lila quietly organized some magazines on the coffee table, he stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, thinking. "Is everything okay, sir?" Maria asked nervously, noticing him. He blinked. "Yes," he said. "Just thinking." She nodded, confused, and went back to dusting. His mind replayed conversations with his lawyer from years back, sitting in a downtown office surrounded by polished mahogany and framed certificates. "You're too trusting, Damian. Trust is what got me this far." "No, your work got you this far. Trust is what almost destroyed you. Staff talk about you. Guests snoop. People steal when you're not looking. Test people. Don't just believe them. test people. He'd done that with business partners, employees, security companies, investors. He'd never thought to test a 10-year-old, but the idea lodged in his mind anyway. Kids were honest when adults weren't listening. Kids repeated what their parents really thought. Kids told the truth, especially when they weren't supposed to. An uneasy curiosity grew in him. What does that child say about me when she thinks I'm not around? Does she respect my house or resent it? Does Maria complain about me behind my back? He wasn't sure he wanted the answers, but he knew he was going to get them. Later that day, as Maria loaded the washing machine and Lila stacked folded towels into a neat pile, Damian cleared his throat from the living room. "Maria." "Yes, sir," she called, rushing in, hands still slightly damp from cleaning solution. "I'm going to rest in here," he said, nodding toward the large leather sectional. "You can finish cleaning around me, but don't worry about the noise. I'm a heavy sleeper." That was a lie. He slept lightly, always had. Years of betrayal had turned rest into a skill instead of a default. He looked at Lila. "You can keep doing whatever it is you're doing," he added. She smiled. "I'm helping Mom fold," she said proudly. He nodded. Maria looked nervous. "Are you sure, sir? We can come back to the living room later. We don't want to disturb you." "It's fine," he said. "I might drift off. Just carry on." She swallowed and nodded. "Yes, sir." As he walked toward the couch, he heard her whisper to Lila, urgent and low. "Listen to me, baby. Stay quiet. Don't touch anything. Don't bother Mr. Cole if he's sleeping. You hear me?" "Yes, Mama," Lila whispered back. Damian lay down on the couch, adjusting the decorative pillows under his head. He loosened his tie, kicked off his shoes, and let his body sink into the cushions. He closed his eyes, slowed his breathing, relaxed his hands. It was an act. His ears, on the other hand, were wide awake. He wanted to hear what happened when he became background. He wanted to know what this child, this careful little girl, really thought. About him, about his home, about the man who paid her mother. He had no idea that the test he was setting up wasn't going to reveal what he expected. Because in a few minutes, when Lila looked at his face and opened her mouth, she wasn't going to talk about his wealth. She was going to talk about his heart. And the 3 words she chose would hit harder than any hostile takeover, any betrayal, any lawsuit he'd ever survived. The mansion softened into hush as Damian Cole settled onto the couch, one arm folded under his head, the other draped across his chest. His breathing slowed, controlled, practiced. Not truly asleep, but still enough to fool anyone who didn't know him. Maria didn't know him. Not really. She only knew the employer version of him. The stern man with short answers, strict rules, and a gaze sharp enough to cut marble. Lila didn't know him either, but children had a way of seeing past armor adults couldn't. Damian didn't realize he was about to learn that the hard way. Maria tiptoed back into the living room, her hands clasped nervously. "Okay, baby," she whispered to Lila. "We clean quiet, all right? Don't talk loud. Don't get close to him." Lila nodded obediently. "Yes, Mama." They moved through the room lightly, like dancers afraid to disturb the floor. Maria dusted the bookshelves. Lila stacked coasters neatly. Both kept glancing at Damian to make sure he hadn't. He hadn't. On the outside, he looked asleep. On the inside, he was sharper than glass. He listened. Every breath, every hum, every quiet word. He wasn't sure why he cared so much. He told himself it was precaution. protection of assets, preventing insurance claims. The usual. But those weren't the real reasons. The real reason sat 5 feet away, humming softly, brushing a speck of dust from a coffee table book as if it were made of gold. Lila Carter. The quiet child who never asked for anything, never pushed boundaries, never complained. But trust was not a luxury Damian allowed himself, not even with a child. So he tested her. Over the last week, Damian had watched Lila more than he liked admitting. Watched how she opened her snacks carefully so crumbs didn't scatter. How she helped her mother polish the baseboards without being asked. How she whispered sorry if she accidentally brushed past furniture. She never stared too long at anything expensive. He hadn't. On the outside, he looked asleep. On the inside, he was sharper than glass. He listened. Every breath, every hum, every quiet word. He wasn't sure why he cared so much. He told himself it was precaution, protection of assets, preventing insurance claims, the usual. But those weren't the real reasons. The real reason sat 5 feet away, humming softly, brushing a speck of dust from a coffee table book as if it were made of gold. Lila Carter. The quiet child who never asked for anything, never pushed boundaries, never complained. But trust was not a luxury Damian allowed himself, not even with a child. So he tested her. Over the last week, Damian had watched Lila more than he liked admitting. Watched how she opened her snacks carefully so crumbs didn't scatter. How she helped her mother polish the baseboards without being asked. How she whispered sorry if she accidentally brushed past furniture. She never stared too long at anything expensive. She never stepped into any room unless Maria told her to. She never, ever left a mess behind. But none of that erased the warnings in his head. People changed when they thought no one was watching. And children repeated what their parents said behind closed doors. He needed to know which one Lila was. So he lay still, waiting, listening. Maria wiped down the bookshelf, glancing nervously at his still form. Lila, she whispered, bring me the smaller duster. Lila tiptoed across the room, grabbed the duster, and brought it to her mother with 2 hands, as if it were fragile. Thank you, Maria whispered. Lila nodded. Then quietly, she whispered something Damian hadn't expected. Mama, he looks tired. Maria froze. Damian almost opened his eyes. Almost. Instead, he slowed his breathing further. He's not tired, Maria whispered quickly. He's rich. Rich people don't get tired the way we do. Lila frowned, but his eyes looked tired, like yours used to. Before we go, that landed like a pebble hitting glass, small but sharp. Maria swatted the air gently. No, honey, don't say that. It's not our place. But it's true, Lila whispered. Damian's chest tightened unexpectedly. He didn't like that. He didn't like that a 10-year-old had noticed something he hid from investors, colleagues, the public. He didn't like that her voice made something old and aching inside him shift. He forced himself to remain still. Maria moved to dust the fireplace mantel. Standing on her toes, Lila hurried to hold her mother's elbow so she wouldn't slip. Careful, Mama, she whispered. Damian noted it. Kids her age were not usually gentle, not usually helpful, not usually observant. Suspicion flickered, but so did something else, something softer. He ignored it. Lila walked around the room, checking for crumbs from her own snacks, as if she owned the mansion. She carefully straightened a magazine stack, picked up lint from the carpet, removed a tiny leaf that blew in from the open patio door. Every gesture tiny, every gesture thoughtful. Maria whispered, "You don't have to do all that, baby." Lila shrugged. "But it's his house. We shouldn't make it dirty." Damian felt something under his ribs tighten again. Why? Why did a child with so little in her life care so much about keeping something pristine that did not belong to her? Was it fear? Respect? Habit? Kindness? He wasn't sure. He hated not being sure. Maria finished dusting and moved to clean the dining table. Lila wandered closer to the couch, too close for Maria's comfort. "Honey," she whispered sharply, "stay away from him while he's resting." Lila nodded, but her eyes lingered on Damian's face. Then, without hesitation, she gently unfolded the small throw blanket draped over the armrest and placed it softly over his shoulders. Maria gasped under her breath. "Lila," she hissed, "don't touch his things." Damian nearly broke character. A warm softness spread under the blanket. He hadn't been covered by anyone. Not a spouse, not a partner, not even family in years. Decades, maybe. He forced himself to stay still, but Lila wasn't done. She whispered, he looked cold. That simple sentence cut deeper than any betrayal ever had. Maria was panicking. "Baby, we don't do that," she whispered sternly. "We don't make Mr. Cole uncomfortable." Lila shook her head. "I wasn't trying to. I just think." She hesitated. Maria urged softly, "Think what?" Lila's voice came out small, honest, and devastating. "Mom, I think he's lonely." The room cracked open with silence. Damian's chest seized. His breath faltered for half a second. Lonely. The word buzzed through him like electricity. He had been called wealthy, powerful, cold, smart, difficult, untouchable. But lonely? Never to his face. Never out loud. Never with such innocence. How did she see it? What part of him was showing? Maria's whisper trembled. "Lila, you can't say things like that. It's not polite." "But it's true," Lila murmured. "He looks like people do when they miss someone." Damian felt the blanket warm his shoulders, felt the weight of her words settle in the hollow places of his life. A child he barely knew had spoken a truth he refused to admit. He had money. He had status. He had a mansion full of expensive art, furniture, collectibles. But he didn't have anyone who cared enough to cover him with a blanket. Before Maria could scold her daughter further, a knock broke the tension. Maria hurried to answer it. Damian didn't move a muscle. He heard the door open, followed by a familiar voice. "Good afternoon, Maria. I'm here for Mr. Cole's consult." Dr. Elena Morris, his therapist, one of the few people allowed into his emotional world. And now she was seeing him. Covered by a blanket, placed by a child he didn't trust in. How did she see it? What part of him was showing? Maria's whisper trembled. "Lila, you can't say things like that. It's not polite." "But it's true," Lila murmured. "He looks like people do when they miss someone." Damian felt the blanket warm his shoulders, felt the weight of her words settle in the hollow places of his life. A child he barely knew had spoken a truth he refused to admit. He had money. He had status. He had a mansion full of expensive art, furniture, collectibles. But he didn't have anyone who cared enough to cover him with a blanket. Before Maria could scold her daughter further, a knock broke the tension. Maria hurried to answer it. Damian didn't move a muscle. He heard the door open, followed by a familiar voice. "Good afternoon, Maria. I'm here for Mr. Cole's consult." Dr. Elena Morris, his therapist. one of the few people allowed into his emotional world, and now she was seeing him. Covered by a blanket, placed by a child he didn't trust in. Dr. Morris stepped inside and whispered, "Well, this is unexpected." Maria flushed deeply. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Morris. My daughter, she didn't mean—" But Dr. Morris shook her head gently. "No need to apologize. Your daughter has emotional intuition most adults don't have." Damian felt heat rise to his neck. Emotional intuition. Lonely, sad, misses someone. Words he never allowed near himself. Yet here they were, spoken by a child he was trying to test. A child who saw him more clearly than anyone else had in years. And he hadn't even opened his eyes yet. Damian Cole stayed perfectly still on the couch, eyes closed, breathing deep and slow. The picture of a man taking an afternoon nap. Only he wasn't sleeping, not even close. His mind was racing, chest tight, thoughts tangled, lonely. That one word from a 10-year-old girl still echoed through him, carving channels through walls he'd spent decades building. But the moment wasn't over yet. Not even close. Dr. Elena Morris gave Maria a reassuring look. "Really," she said softly, "don't feel embarrassed. Children see things we adults ignore." Maria wrung her hands. "Lila just talks sometimes without thinking, Dr. Morris. She doesn't understand how it sounds." Lila tugged at her mother's sleeve. "But I didn't say anything bad," she whispered. Maria knelt down, voice tight. "Honey, we do not talk about Mr. Cole. We work quietly. We respect him from a distance." "But Mom," Lila's eyes flicked to the couch. He did look lonely. Maria gasped softly and placed a gentle hand over her daughter's mouth. "Stop. Please. If he hears that—" Every muscle in Damian's back tensed. If he hears that what? That a child noticed the emptiness in his home? That she picked up on something even adults couldn't see? That she cared? He swallowed hard. He should have been annoyed. He should have been offended. But instead, he felt exposed, seen, and he didn't know how to handle it. Dr. Morris watched the interaction with sharp, knowing eyes. "I see what's happening," she murmured. "Lila isn't being disrespectful. She's being perceptive." Maria looked mortified. "But she shouldn't say things like that in his home." Dr. Morris smiled gently. "Maybe his home needed to hear it." Damian nearly inhaled wrong. Needed to hear it? He had hired Dr. Morris for stress management, trust rebuilding, career-life balance. He did not sign up for this level of emotional exposure. Yet here he was, pretending to sleep while his therapist witnessed a child diagnosing his heart better than any adult ever had. Maria went back to wiping down surfaces with shaky hands. Lila followed, quiet for a moment, but only a moment. As she helped fold a small throw blanket, she glanced again at Damian. "Mom?" Maria whispered harshly. "Lila, please, enough." But Lila kept her voice tiny and earnest. "I'm not trying to be bad. I just think he might miss someone." Damian's throat tightened. Miss someone? Who? His brother who passed? His mother? The fiancé who walked out after draining his accounts? Or maybe he missed having a life before success demanded all of him. Maria tried, desperately, to stop the words. "No more talking about Mr. Cole." "But why?" Lila whispered. "Nobody talks to him. He eats alone. He watches TV alone. He walks past us like he's the only one here." Maria froze. Damian stopped breathing for a beat. Dr. Morris raised an eyebrow. Children. Brutally honest, unfiltered, but never cruel. Lila wasn't being mean. She was being observant. Too observant. Maria whispered, "Baby, Mr. Cole isn't alone." Lila tilted her head. Then why does he look like he needs a hug? That sentence nearly undid Damian. His fists curled involuntarily. He hadn't been hugged in years. Years. Not since before betrayal made him barricade himself behind emotional steel doors. Not since love became a liability. Lila walked toward the windows and peeked at the enormous garden outside. Her voice softened into something dreamy. When I grow up, I want to have a big house too. Maria paused mid-wipe. You do, baby? Mm-hmm. Lila continued folding the blanket, speaking as if narrating a future she could already see. And I want a big table so lots of people can eat together. Damian's chest tightened further. He couldn't remember the last time he shared a meal with someone. Not formally. Not even casually. And I want a room full of toys, she added, so kids who don't have any can come and play. Damian felt heat rise to his eyes. Lila wasn't dreaming of wealth for herself. She was dreaming of a place full of people, full of warmth, full of life. Everything his house lacked. Everything he had cut out of his own world. Then she said the line that completely shattered him. And as someone looks lonely, like Mr. Cole does, they can come too. And we'll give them a family. The throw blanket slipped through Maria's hands. Dr. Morris stared at Lila, soft shock in her eyes. Damian's heart, the one he guarded with iron and distrust, cracked clean down the middle. He had built a fortress around himself, a mansion that screamed success. But a 10-year-old saw straight through the walls and found the hollow center he refused to acknowledge. Family. The word hit him like a blow. He squeezed his eyes tighter to maintain the illusion of sleep. But his breathing betrayed him. It hitched. Barely, but enough. Honey, Maria said softly, voice shaking. Don't say that. It's too personal. If he heard you. He won't be mad, Lila said confidently. Lonely people don't get mad when you notice them. They get quiet. Damian felt like he'd been punched. She saw him. Not his mansion, not his money, not his expensive suits. She saw him. The parts no one was supposed to see. And she wasn't afraid of it. She wasn't using it. She simply wanted to give him what she had lost and rebuilt. Family. Dr. Morris tilted her head, studying him. Maria, she whispered, I don't think he's asleep. Maria stiffened. Lila blinked. Damian fought the instinct to open his eyes, but his breathing betrayed him again. A tiny, sharp inhale at the wrong moment. Dr. Morris smiled knowingly. Yes, I think he heard everything. Maria gasped softly. Oh no. Lila, sweetheart, come here. But Lila just stared at him. Eyes wide. Soft. Curious. Not afraid. She stepped closer to the couch. Mr. Cole, she whispered. Damian didn't move. Not yet. He wasn't ready. A child had said the most painful truth he'd heard in decades. And he needed one more moment, just one, to steady himself before he faced it. Maria clutched her daughter's shoulders. I am so sorry, sir, she whispered toward him, panic rising. She didn't mean, please don't fire me. Dr. Morris gently touched Maria's arm. Maria, she said softly, I don't think this is the kind of moment that ends in firing. Damian finally took a real breath. A deep one. Not forced, not performed. And in that breath, everything changed. The test was over, and the results weren't what he expected. Lila didn't fail. He did. He failed to see what she saw. He failed to recognize the emptiness he'd been living with, the loneliness his mansion amplified, the softness he had long forgotten he possessed. A 10-year-old just reminded him he was human, and he didn't know what to do with that truth yet. But he was about to try, because in a moment, he would open his eyes, and everything afterward would be different. Damian couldn't keep up the act any longer. Lila's words were still echoing inside his head, bouncing off every cold wall he built. He looks lonely. Maybe he misses someone. We'd invite him to our house so he could have a family too. He felt exposed, unmasked, emotionally cornered in a way no business rival had ever managed. And the worst part, everything she said was true. He was lonely. He did miss someone. He did wish his home wasn't so painfully quiet. For years, he'd convinced himself isolation was strength. But now, the innocent voice of a child was unraveling him faster than any betrayal ever had. He inhaled, real, shaky, uncontrolled. That single breath gave him away. Maria's eyes widened. Dr. Morris raised an eyebrow, confirming her suspicion. And Lila, standing only a few feet from the couch, whispered, "Mr. Cole, you awake?" Damian slowly opened his eyes. It felt like ripping open old scars. Maria immediately stepped forward, voice trembling. "Sir! Oh my God, sir, I'm so sorry. She didn't mean anything she said. She's just a child." Damian pushed himself upright on the couch, blanket pooling around his waist. His voice came out softer than he intended. "Maria, stop." But Maria didn't hear the softness. She heard fear. Fear of losing her job. Fear of disappointing the only employer who ever gave her stability. Fear for her daughter, who didn't understand the weight of her words. She bowed her head. "Please, sir, I promise she didn't mean to offend you. She's been through a lot, and sometimes she just says things." Damian stared at her. Offended? Is that what she thought? That he was angry? If anything, he was overwhelmed. He shook his head slowly. "I'm not offended." Maria blinked. "Sir? I'm not angry," he said again, quieter this time, surprising even himself. Dr. Morris nodded knowingly, folding her arms. Lila stepped forward a tiny bit. "You're not?" she whispered. Damian's eyes softened at her innocence. "No," he said, "I'm not." Lila walked right up to him. Just walked. No fear, no hesitation, just pure, childlike sincerity. She looked at him the way no adult ever did, not with calculation, not with judgment, not with caution, with curiosity, with empathy, with surprising courage. Her voice was small but steady. "Did I say something wrong?" Damian swallowed. His throat felt thick. "No," he said. "You said something honest." She frowned thoughtfully. "What part?" He exhaled through his nose. "The part about lonely people getting quiet." Maria closed her eyes, mortified. "Oh, honey, no, don't." But Damian lifted a hand gently. "It's okay." He looked directly at Lila. "I wasn't asleep. I heard everything." Lila's eyes widened. Maria froze. Dr. Morris smiled gently, as if this was exactly what needed to happen. Lila asked, "Did it make you sad?" Damian wasn't used to being asked how he felt. Not at meetings, not by acquaintances, not by anyone. He cleared his throat. "A little," he admitted. Lila bit her lip. "I didn't mean to make you sad." He shook his head. "You didn't," he said. "You told the truth." Lila tilted her head the way children do when trying to understand something very adult. "Do you miss someone?" she asked softly. Maria gasped. "Lila!" But Damian didn't flinch. He didn't deflect. He didn't hide. He didn't tell her it was none of her business. He simply nodded. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." Silence washed over the room. Maria looked at him differently, as if seeing sadness she'd never noticed under the tailored shirts and expensive watches. Lila stepped closer, and gently placed her small hand over his. What happened to them? Her words were kind, not intrusive. Damian stared at their hands together, his large, cold fingers and her tiny, warm ones. My parents passed years ago, he said softly. I was engaged once, but she left. And after that, I didn't let many people close anymore. Lila blinked up at him. That's why you look lonely? Damian exhaled sharply, a painful sound, like a truth tearing free from inside him. Yes, he whispered. That's why. Dr. Morris murmured under her breath. There it is. Maria suddenly sat on the arm of a nearby chair, emotional, tense. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought you were just strict. Damian managed a weak, humorless smile. I am strict, he said, but I'm not heartless. If I had known, she said shakily, I would have. He shook his head. This isn't your burden, Maria. Her eyes glistened. Thank you for not being angry with her. He looked at Lila again. How could I be angry? He murmured. She saw something no one else ever notices. Dr. Morris stepped closer. Damian, she said gently, this child just did in 10 minutes what I've been trying to get you to do in a year. He frowned. What's that? Admit that the loneliness hurts, she said. The word hurts felt heavy in the air. He didn't deny it. He didn't deflect. He didn't stiffen. He just lowered his gaze. It does, he whispered. Lila's voice broke the silence again. You don't have to be lonely, she said simply. You just have to let people sit with you. The innocence of it almost dropped him to his knees. He really looked at her. The compassion, the empathy, the understanding far beyond her years. How did you know? He asked softly. Lila shrugged in that childlike way. Because lonely people look like my mom used to look, she whispered. Before she got this job, before she smiled again. Maria covered her mouth with both hands. Damian's voice cracked as he asked, And what do I look like to you? Lila didn't hesitate. Like someone who needs a friend. Damian closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in his own home. Not because of money, not because of status, not because of pity. Because a child saw him and cared. He took a slow, shaky breath. Thank you, Lila, he whispered. You have no idea what your words mean to me. She squeezed his hand gently. Now you look a little less lonely, she said with a bright smile. And somehow, he did. The room didn't quite know what to be. It wasn't a workplace anymore. It wasn't just a therapy session. It wasn't just a quiet mansion afternoon. It had shifted into something else entirely. A confessional, a mirror, a moment where everyone was a little too human to hide. Damian sat on the couch, the blanket still half draped over his lap, Lila's small hand resting on his. Maria stood nearby, eyes red and glassy, torn between fear for her job and gratitude that things hadn't gone the way she'd imagined. Dr. Morris watched with a calm, clinical compassion, as if witnessing a breakthrough she'd been waiting on for months. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence wasn't hostile. It was just full of everything that had just been said. Lonely, misses someone, needs a friend. Words that had no place on a balance sheet, but somehow weighed more than all his assets combined. Damian cleared his throat. He wasn't used to his voice shaking. He didn't like it, but he didn't stop it either. Lila, he said softly, can I ask you something? She nodded, wide-eyed. Yes, sir. Why did you put the blanket on me? He asked. You could have just walked past, done what your mom said, kept your distance. Lila frowned, like the answer was obvious. Because you looked cold, she said, and tired. He swallowed, That's it? She shrugged. And lonely, she added. Cold, tired, and lonely. Maria groaned under her breath. Baby, please, she whispered. We talked about. But Damian lifted his hand again. It's okay, Maria, he murmured. Let her talk. He turned back to Lila. What does lonely look like to you? He asked quietly. She thought for a second. Like when somebody is sitting in a big room by themselves, she said, slowly. And they have lots of stuff, but no one to talk to. His heart stuttered. She glanced around. You have big TV, she continued. Big couch, big table, big house. But I never see you laughing, or talking, or having people over. She looked up at him. That's lonely. Damian opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Because what was he supposed to say? You're wrong? She wasn't. Dr. Morris spoke up gently. Damian, she said, what's the last thing you remember about not being lonely in this house? He stared at the far wall. His mind went somewhere else. A long ago night. Voices in the kitchen. A pot of pasta on the stove. His brother laughing. Music playing off someone's phone. Not fancy, not curated. Just alive. Then another memory. His fiancée sitting at the island, legs swinging off the stool, teasing him about his terrible chopping skills. Her laughter echoing off those same marble counters. Before the lies, before the hidden accounts, before the betrayal. He blinked back to the present. I don't remember, he lied. His brain remembered. His heart remembered. His body remembered. But his mouth wasn't ready to admit it. Lila studied him. You remember, she said softly. Your eyes got shiny. The kid had no brakes, and yet he didn't hate it. Maria shifted, rubbing her hands together. I know what lonely looks like, she said quietly. Lila's right. He turned to her. She rarely spoke unless he asked a direct question. Now she was offering something on her own. How do you know? He asked. She let out a shaky breath. Before this job, she said, we lived in our car for a while. His chest tightened. He hadn't known that. We had nobody, she continued. No family who'd take us in, no friends who called. People would drive past and look away, like we didn't exist, like we were invisible. She swallowed hard. I saw that same look in your eyes the first week I worked here, she admitted. Behind the rich, behind the expensive things. Damian looked at her, stunned. How come you never said anything? He asked. She gave a small, sad smile. Because you're my boss, sir, she said, not my friend. That sentence hit harder than he expected. Not because it was rude, because it was true. Lila looked between the two adults, as if trying to glue their broken edges together. She moved closer to the coffee table, picked up one of the decorative coasters, and traced the pattern with her finger. Mom, she said quietly. Yes, baby. Can I tell him my big house idea again? Maria hesitated, glancing at Damian. He nodded faintly. I want to hear it, he said, if that's okay. Lila's face lit up with shy excitement. Okay, she said. She sucked in a breath and started, words tumbling out more confidently this time. When I grow up, I want to have a big house too, she began. Not 'cause I want to be fancy, but because I want to fill it. He watched her, transfixed. Fill it with people, she continued. Lonely people, people who don't have anyone, kids with no grandma, old people with no kids, moms who don't have a safe place. Her voice softened. People like we used to be. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. Dr. Morris blinked hard, fighting her own emotion. Lila stepped closer to Damian again. And if somebody looked lonely, she said, like you did that first day we came here, I'd invite them in. We'd give them food and a hug and a family, even if it's just for a day. She said it so simply, like it was the most natural plan in the world. Not a strategy, not a brand, not a PR campaign, just an instinct, a heart response. Damian's vision blurred. He blinked, and one treacherous tear slipped out before he could stop it. He wiped it away quickly, annoyed at himself. But Lila saw eye. Of course she did. Now you look sad, she whispered. He let out a shaky laugh. I kind of am, he admitted. Because of what I said? He shook his head. Because of how much I wish I'd met someone like you sooner. It wasn't just what she said. It was what it forced him to see. All the empty nights walking through silent halls. All the meals eaten at a table built for 12, alone. All the conversations replaced by conference calls. All the relationships traded for deals. All the locks he put on his heart so no one could hurt him again. They'd worked. Nobody hurt him anymore, because nobody was close enough to try. He'd won the game of self-protection, and realized too late that the prize was isolation. Damian, Dr. Morris said softly, reading his expression like a book. What are you feeling right now? He let out a breath that felt like it dragged broken glass out of him. Like a stupid man in a big empty house, he said, being schooled by a 10-year-old. Lila's face scrunched. That's not nice, she said. You shouldn't call yourself stupid. He almost smiled. Bad choice of words, he corrected. Let me try again. He met her eyes. I feel like I've been so busy protecting myself that I forgot what it's like to let anyone in. She nodded, like that made perfect sense to her. So let us in, she said simply. Maria stiffened. Lila, you can't just... Damian held up a hand again. Maria, he said gently, for once, let's see where she's going. She hesitated, then nodded. Lila took a breath. You don't have any kids, right? She asked. He shook his head. No, I don't. And your parents are gone? Yes. And you don't have a wife? Another quiet no. So it's just you, she concluded, in this big thing. He nodded. Yes. Then she smiled, soft and bright. Well, she said, it doesn't have to be just you anymore. That simple sentence hit him harder than any of the others. It wasn't pity. It was an offer. Not of charity, of connection, of presence, of shared space. Damian inhaled deeply, steadying himself. Lila, he said slowly, if I let you and your mom be in my life more, would that make you happy? She nodded quickly. Yeah, she said. I like your house. It's pretty. It just needs people. That coaxed a real laugh out of him, a soft one, rusty but real. People, huh? She nodded. And maybe a dog. Maria groaned. Don't you start trying to get Mr. Cole to buy a dog. But Damian kept laughing softly. A dog, people, noise, chaos, everything he'd carefully eliminated. Everything this kid was gently reintroducing with words alone. His storm of grief, guilt, and regret began to shift into something lighter. Not gone, but different. Full of possibility. He wasn't done changing. Not yet. There were still decisions to make, offers to extend, promises to keep. And in the next moments, he'd do something he hadn't done in a very, very long time. Invite someone into his world on purpose. Not for business, not for status, for family. Even if it didn't have that name yet. For a long moment, the mansion felt strangely still. Not empty, not cold, just still. Like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what Damian Cole, the man who never cracked, never softened, never let anyone in, would say next. Maria shifted nervously, wringing her hands. Lila stood close, her small fingers resting lightly on his sleeve. as if she'd decided that touch was allowed now. Dr. Morris watched with the soft, steady gaze of someone who knew a breakthrough was coming and didn't intend to interrupt it. Damian looked around his own living room. The expensive furniture, the polished floors, the massive windows overlooking a perfectly manicured garden. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Something had shifted in him so deeply that even air tasted different. He took a shaky breath and finally spoke. "I don't know how to do this." His voice cracked on the first word. Damian Cole, self-made millionaire, feared negotiator, iron-willed perfectionist, sounded fragile, uncertain, human. Maria's eyes widened. Lila's eyebrows lifted in curiosity. Dr. Morris nodded slightly, silently urging him to continue. Damian rubbed a hand over his face. "I don't know how to do this," he repeated quietly. Maria stepped forward, just an inch. "Do what, sir?" He looked up at her, really looked, his eyes bare of the armor he usually wore. "Let people close," he whispered. Silence fell over the room again, but this time it was tender, protective. Not the silence of loneliness, the silence of a man learning to breathe again. Damian exhaled shakily. "I've spent years," he said, "building walls, because every time I let someone in, I got hurt." Maria opened her mouth, but stopped herself. She didn't want to interrupt. He continued, "I lost my parents young. Then I trusted someone I loved, and she used me. Betrayed me. Broke things I didn't know could break." His voice dipped lower. "And every time something like that happens, you tell yourself, never again." Lila listened intently, her face soft with empathy. Damian swallowed a lump. "So I'd built this empire, this house, this fortress, and I convinced myself being alone was safer." He glanced around. "But there's a difference between safe and empty." Maria pressed a hand to her chest, a sympathetic ache carving through her. Lila stepped forward again, her voice quiet but steady. "You're not empty," she said gently. Damian huffed out a breath, shaky and humorless. "Feels like it sometimes." She shook her head. "That's because no one's sitting with you." Dr. Morris smiled softly. Maria blinked rapidly, trying not to cry. Damian stared at Lila. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice rough. Lila shrugged in that simple, childlike way. "Houses don't get empty when people leave," she said. "They get empty when nobody comes back." Her words crawled under his ribs, settling somewhere deep. "And now we're here," she added, "so it's not empty anymore." That broke him. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't a collapse, not a dramatic movie moment. Just a single tear, then a breath, then another, then his shoulders trembled. Maria panicked. "Oh, sir, please don't cry. Lila didn't mean to." The Damian shook his head. "No," he whispered. "It's okay. I needed to." For the first time since she started working there, Maria felt brave enough to speak honestly. "Mr. Cole." Damian looked at her through tear-glossed eyes. "Yes, Maria?" "You don't have to hide from us," she said gently. "We know how to be gentle with broken things." Her voice trembled. "I was broken once too. We both were, me and my daughter. But someone gave me a chance, and it made me whole again." Damian's breath hitched. "You're not the only one who had to start over," she whispered. Lila slipped her hand into her mother's. "And you can start over too," she added, "with us." Maria stiffened. "Baby, don't." But Damian stared at Lila with a stunned expression. "With you?" he asked quietly. Lila nodded. "Your family now." Family. A word he had avoided for years. A word that hurt too much to even say out loud. A word that felt impossible to utter. And yet, here was a 10-year-old girl offering it without hesitation, without fear, without condition. Just offering it because she felt it. Damian let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "I don't deserve that," he said hoarsely. Maria shook her head immediately. "No, sir, that's not true." Lila stepped even closer. "Family isn't something you deserve," she said. "It's something you choose." Dr. Morris whispered under her breath, "And something that chooses you." Damian's hands trembled. "Do you choose me?" he asked Lila quietly. Without hesitation, she nodded. "Yeah, I do." That was it. The last wall fell. All the grief he buried, all the loneliness, all the fear, anger, and abandonment. It finally broke open. Damian covered his face with both hands as he cried openly, messily, honestly. For the first time in years, Maria rushed forward, instinctively placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're human." Lila gently hugged his arm. "It's okay to be sad. That means your heart's waking up." Dr. Morris nodded approvingly, tears in her own eyes. "You're not breaking, Damian," she said. "You're healing." When Damian finally lifted his head, his eyes were red, but his voice steady. "Maria, Lila." They leaned closer. "Yes?" Maria whispered. He swallowed. "Would you let me be part of your life?" Maria blinked in shock. Lila beamed instantly. "Like friends?" she asked. He nodded. "Friends, support, whatever you're comfortable with. I don't want this house to be empty anymore." Maria covered her mouth, crying softly. "Yes," she whispered. "We'd like that very much." Lila squeezed his hand again. "See, you're not lonely now." And for the first time in years, he believed it. The emotional storm had settled, leaving a quiet warmth in its place. Damian wasn't pretending anymore. No walls, no act, no distance. Just a man, finally ready to let someone in. Maria wiped her eyes discreetly. Lila sat beside Damian like she'd been doing it her whole life. He took a deep breath. "Maria," he began softly, "I want to make things right, for both of you." She shook her head quickly. "Sir, you don't owe us anything." "Yes," he said gently, "I do." He stood, straightening his shirt, but there was no cold authority in his posture, just sincerity. "First," he said, "I'm giving you a full salary increase, a real one. Enough so you never struggle again." Maria gasped, hand over her heart. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "You've earned it 10 times over." Then he knelt, so he was eye level with Lila. "And you," he said with a soft smile, "you're brilliant, kind, wise beyond your years. I want to make sure you have every opportunity." Lila tilted her head. "What does that mean?" "It means," Damian said, "I want to set up a fund for your education. School, supplies, anything you need. Your future matters to me." Maria burst into tears, quiet but uncontrollable. "No one's ever done something like this for us," she whispered. Damian's voice softened. "No one ever should have had to, but I want to now." Lila grinned, wrapping her arms around him in a fearless, honest hug. "Now you're part of our family," she said. Damian froze for half a second, then hugged her back. Not awkwardly, not stiffly, but like a man who finally understood what it felt like to belong. Later that week, Damian invited Maria and Lila to use the guest house on the property. Not out of charity, out of care. "Live closer," he said. "Be safe, be comfortable." Maria accepted with grateful tears. The mansion, once silent, hollow and cold, slowly filled with Lila's laughter, Maria's humming, smells of real cooking, warm footsteps, soft conversations. For the first time in years, Damian didn't dread coming home. Home was no longer polished emptiness. It was alive. One evening, as the sun dipped across the garden, Lila looked at him thoughtfully. "You look different," she said. He chuckled. "Do I?" "Yeah," she said. "You don't look lonely anymore." Damian swallowed hard. "I'm not," he whispered, and he knew it was the truth. Because he hadn't just hired help. He'd gained something he didn't know how to ask for. A family. The sun was low that evening, casting warm gold across the mansion's garden. Damian stood by the window, watching Lila chase butterflies in the grass, while Maria set a small table with dinner outside. The scene felt simple, ordinary, human, and yet, to him, it felt like a miracle. A home once filled with silence was now alive with laughter, footsteps, and warmth. It didn't echo the way it used to, because emptiness can echo, but love absorbs sound, pulling it close instead of letting it bounce away. Dr. Morris's words from earlier repeated softly in his mind. "You're not breaking, you're healing." He believed it now. As Damian stepped outside, Lila waved him over excitedly. "Come sit with us." He laughed, an actual laugh. Not the polite kind he saved for business meetings. I'm coming." He joined them at the table, the breeze warm, the moment gentle. Lila leaned her chin on her hands. "You look happy," she said. He brushed a hand through his hair, eyes soft. "I think I am." Maria smiled, that quiet, grateful smile he had come to appreciate. "You've changed, sir." Damian shook his head. "No," he corrected. "I didn't change alone. You two changed my house and my life." Lila kicked her feet back and forth under her chair. "Everyone needs somebody," she said, "even rich people." Damian chuckled. "Especially rich people." Later, as he watched Maria and Lila walk toward their new guest house, a peaceful voice rose in his mind. Money can buy space, but only people can make it home. He'd spent years protecting himself from the world, believing solitude was safer. But a single child, with a soft heart and an honest voice, cut through miles of emotional armor with a single truth. Lonely people aren't dangerous. They're hurting, and they're waiting for someone brave enough to see them. As he locked the door for the night, Damian whispered to himself, "I didn't need a test for her. I needed a lesson for me." And from the garden outside came Lila's cheerful voice. "Good night, Mr. Cole." He smiled. A good night indeed, because he finally understood. Sometimes the biggest test is realizing the lonely one was you.